thank you for joining me on Lion Quirks, the podcast. Pleased to have you here and introduce you to all the cat-loving people out there and the other quirky lion people that exist. I know that we've had to delay our chat a bit because of storms and thunder on this side, and then you two going out to feed your cats on that side. So life of at the sanctuary, life on the mountain, hey? Anyway, sticking to the theme of the podcast, I'd like to begin by asking you two to tell our listeners why you guys qualify as Lion Quirks, what you do, and why.
Yeah, okay. So it's quite interesting to try and work out what the definition of a lion quirk actually is. But we're assuming that it's got something to do with crazy people that give up their previous life to come and sit on the side of the mountain and rescue lions and take care of them for the rest of their life. Andy, I suppose, for us, it was just a realization of what is going on in South Africa, particularly in the lion breeding industry. And, slowly becoming more aware of that and getting to the point where we felt that our love for lions, so we enjoyed going to national parks and game reserves and observing lions doing what they do. It probably through quite a few introspection and our own discussions, deciding that we needed to maybe make a slightly bigger contribution than just that and become more directly involved and get our hands dirty, if we can say it that way. And so I suppose that's how we've ended up moving from the Eastern Cape, where we'd lived in farm for many years, and now we find ourselves here in the Eastern Free State with a lion or a big cat sanctuary.
That does qualify you both as Lion Quirks. You're having your own big cat sanctuary. Ansa, I know you were a teacher by trade. I wonder how that helps you, but I know that you've been a cat lady, a little bit of a crazy cat lady long before this, that you were involved with rescuing domestic cats, and I think a lot of our listeners will relate to that, being cat people. How did that sort of segue into big cats, and do you see any similarity between the little guys and the big guys?
Yeah, to a certain extent, I've always taken care of feral cat colonies. And when I was a teacher in Utenac, I had a feral cat colony that I took care of at that school. And before I left, I had them all sterilized, and they were all then returned. And I kept on feeding them until I left, and I made arrangements for someone else to take over from me. And then on the farm as well, there was this feral colony, took care of them, all sterilized before we left. Also made arrangements for someone to take care of them. Even now, we still buy their food every month and send it. It's delivered by courier, and there's someone taking care of them. They do tend to be similar. They don't roar, unfortunately, but the mothers stick together, bring their little babies. They always brought their kittens to the central feeding point once they were older to start eating. And they are little, especially feral cats, they are little mini lions. They are also fierce little creatures. With the supplementary feeding, it helps them to stay strong. And they do hunt by themselves. On the farm they hunted, they caught whatever there was for them, mice, rats, even birds. And yeah, you would see the mothers took care of their little ones until they were old enough, brought them there to come and feed. And then they kind of just wash their hands of it, because now you are old enough to take care of yourself. You can eat. The fathers were not involved. The fathers, they are babies. The mother took care of the little ones, and that's it. But I've always been a crazy cat person, and when I met David, I think I changed him into a crazy cat person. I know his first pet was a cat, and most men usually have dogs. And when I met him, he had his two beautiful Labradors, and but I think this cat thing is something that once you are a cat person, you are a cat person. Whether it's domestic cats, whether it's big cats, they are just so different. They are really different.
So with the big cats, do you see similarities in their behavior? Like, can you almost preempt or sort of understand something that the big cats are going to do, or the way they're looking at you, their body emotions, because you sort of can, speak cat, because you're cat fluent already? I'm sure that it helped you. I can see from my side that both being a teacher and being a crazy cat lady who looked after all these feral cats, that you really would, those two skills would have stood you in good stead with the sanctuary.
Yeah, they do. There are definitely similarities in the way they behave. You do read them. You can look in their eyes. I think, although our cats at the moment, these cats we have, they are a little bit lazier at night. They might not be as active as the big cats at night, but there's definitely this crazy time, late afternoon and very early in the morning, that they are really very active and they're just doing all their little cat things. Yeah, so I think, and even I'm sure you would also agree, love, that looking at our cats, we do see the similarities between what they do here and what we see. And I think, especially for me, I would say, especially with um, the tigers in our care, they to me are sometimes even more like domestic cats because they are slightly more sensitive than lions. Lions are just lions. They are just being themselves. They are so full of confidence. They are just so big and strong and powerful. So yeah, but you can definitely you read in their eyes, you see them talking, you definitely similarities between your domestic cats and your big cats.
And David, so you come from
Yes.
a farming background, and consulting and working in farming. How did that help you? And I can imagine that there's so many skills that have been beneficial in setting up a sanctuary. The fact that you come with the background that you come with.
Yeah, I suppose, right through my farming career and consulting career, I focus very much on trying to farm in harmony with nature. And when I first started trying to promote that concept, it was almost unheard of, to be honest, certainly in the citrus industry. And so you've got your combination of love for animals, your wanting the best for those animals, whether it was wild animals or domestic animals, but also a very strong sense of the impact that we as humans have on the environment that these animals are living in. And it became a case of that, when you were promoting certain programs in that industry, you were always taking into account the potential impact, negative impact that this could have on other animals that were sharing that property with you. And we always had a very strong philosophy that we as farmers were custodians of that piece of land that we were farming. And, and so it was a very, very strong emphasis. Lots of reasons why somebody might want to farm organically or more environmentally consciously. But for us, one of the really, really strong focus points was to reduce the impact that our livelihood was having on the animals that were sharing that property with us. So, I mean, when we moved here, I mean, obviously the big focus has been on setting up a sanctuary to be able to help, these lions and tigers. But at the same time, it's a beautiful property with a lot of its own indigenous fauna and flora here. And we've put a really big focus on trying to preserve them as well and reduce the impact of our activities on their well-being here on the property. So I suppose that for me has been the biggest kind of comparison between the two. I mean, obviously consulting and running a citrus farm, I've always maintained that farmers are really phenomenal people from the point of view of the number of things that they have to get right and often have to do it on their own. So you have to be quite handy. You have to be quite skillful with PRO. You've got customers. You've got your staff that you're managing. You've got the environment that you're taking care of. You're looking at the bottom line, budgeting, planning, all these sort of things that in many other walks of life, you have a particular expert that's covering all of those aspects. But many farmers do it all for themselves. And it's a feather in their cap that they manage to get all these things right and farm successfully.
Yeah. Yeah, those are all the things I was thinking about. Is like, farmers do have wear all those caps and cover so many aspects of the business. And all of that to come into this decision to set up a sanctuary, having those skills and that background, I think is really helped, eh? But talking about, I'd like to touch on some of the technicalities of setting up a sanctuary, with sort of focus on the difference between, say, somebody deciding, oh, great, I'd like to have some big cats, and sort of setting out to just build some enclosures for big cats, compared to the actualities of setting up a proper sanctuary and, the dedicating your entire lives to living on the side of the mountain looking after big cats.
Yeah, so it was during COVID that I suppose the concept for us really grew. We'd spoken a lot about this previously, and but life is busy and you're running around and you don't often have time to take stock of where you are. So for us, COVID, although it was a tough time for everybody, I would imagine, we still look back at that as being the time in our lives that it gave us a chance to sit down without other people around. We were isolated on the farm, and really talk about where we saw ourselves going in the next couple of years. And we kind of came to the conclusion that, if we didn't make this decision now, we had to accept that it was probably going to pass us by. And as a result of that, we decided, okay, well, let's look to sell the farm. I mean, I'd lived on that farm for close to 30 years. So it really was my entire career and life since I left university. But we decided that was what we needed to do. But at the same time, we also said that, we need to do this thing properly. It's not going to just be a half-hearted affair. This is now a full commitment. We're changing complete direction. And although we had great love for lions, and I suppose we knew quite a lot about lions in the wild, setting up a sanctuary, taking care of captive bred lions, coming from previously disadvantaged, exploited backgrounds, is a completely different setup. And so I suppose the first thing that we did was we did a lot of research, and we we contacted as many people as we could that were already in the industry, because we had no previous experience of this. So we were kind of coming into this thing completely green. So we spoke to many, many people with different skill sets, and every time we spoke to them, we asked, listen, in your opinion, who are the other people that we should be contacting to speak to? And there was quite a remarkable network that was kind of made available to us, and we contacted different people, and everyone had a slightly different take, and everyone added some value to the kind of information that we were trying to glean. But for me, the overriding message that came through from literally every single person we spoke to was that in South Africa, although there are already some fantastic sanctuaries in place, there was a desperate need for more sanctuaries. And so, the question you're asking is it a viable thing for us to look to do? Everyone is just saying, for sure, if you guys can do this, it's going to be fantastic to add some small contribution to a really tough situation in South Africa. And so that ended up kind of becoming the bottom line, that when we spoke to each other, we said, listen, well, okay, there's definitely a need for another sanctuary in South Africa. And so we were committed to then going ahead and setting it up.
So you were met with great support.
Yeah, it's interesting. I suppose in many kind of industries and things, one would imagine that there's a level of camaraderie between people, but my experiences in the farming industry was that although you had closer groups of people that worked together, at the end of the day, you kind of all competition for each other. And if a farmer had learned from experience and from making mistakes, and he paid his school fees to find things out, they weren't always completely open to sharing those ideas, because that might have been his competitive advantage that would have given him a foot into the marketplace and an advantage over his competitors. So initially I was very impressed with how open people were to sharing information, and if you ask questions, they were very comfortable to give you the answers. And so it certainly, once we'd finished with that process, it was like a kind of a due diligence for us to look at what was required, what were the challenges, what were the things that we hadn't even considered. And once we put that all together, I think we had a fairly good blueprint on what it was going to take to set up a sanctuary, and that, I suppose, at the end of that, gave us a lot of confidence. And we've always been people that are fully committed to what we do, and we get stuck in, and we get our hands dirty. And so that was never going to be a problem for us to do that. It was just the other things that we needed to confirm and get clarity on.
So what does it take? Like, talk me through some of the process that you had to go through. Like, from the moment so once you decided, once you've done your due diligence and you knew you're going to go ahead and do this, like, what does it take?
Well, I think the next step was for us to find the property, the suitable property. It's not just you just buy a farm or you buy a piece of land and there is a sanctuary. We had a certain vision, what we want, where we want to be. And searching for the right property where we could see ourselves having the sanctuary, living the rest of our lives. So, and then we found this little piece of heaven, and then it was all the technical putting together the management plan, getting approval from Destia. That took almost a year to get that put into place. So that was a little bit frustrating. It's not as easy as you think, just there's a sanctuary, we are, next thing you have your lions and your tigers and other big cats. So yeah, it was to put our management plan into place. And then we decided, you sit and you decide on what would you like to achieve, your mission, your whole vision, your whole mission in life with this. Where are we going? And for us, it was just never a question that we will definitely, it is going to be an ethical sanctuary. There's going to be absolutely, breeding is out of the question. Playing with these animals, touching them, interacting with them, it is just not going to happen. And to the extent that our sanctuary is not even open to the public, because we decided, for us, it's like we are busy righting a wrong here. It's wrong that these animals are behind fences. They should not be behind fences. But we are giving them as much wildness, as much freedom as they can have while still being behind fences, and to give them privacy, to give them the choice of, what do I want to do today? I'm going to hide in that bush all day long. I'm not seeing people. It is very quiet here, so they don't hear people. They don't see people. The only time they see people is when we go up in the mornings. We check the fence lines. We go up in the afternoons to feed. In between, they can do whatever they please. Have all the privacy, they have their space. So that is what is very important to us, was to achieve that. We always explain to people, this is like a retirement village for these animals. They come here to spend the rest of their life and to just relax and be themselves, be as wild as they choose to be, while still living here in captivity, because they are in captivity, but they are not being exploited. There's absolutely no exploitation happening on the side. So yeah, and then it was the next is to get your name out there. People need to trust you, and it's not that easy. You have no track record. So other sanctuaries, the public in general, they need to know that we can actually trust these people. They are doing what they say they are going to do, and then your first big cats arrive, and suddenly we released Amber and Oya on the 18th of October 2022, and suddenly that morning we were a sanctuary. There are two big cats in our care, and from there we grew. It's growing slowly, but it's actually not that slowly. We just recently sat down and we realized that we've already made a difference in the lives of 12 big cats, and that in 2 years. So we are getting there.
Yeah. So
One of
you
the
touched on
things that I
several things
will
there.
add on there, Andy,
Yeah.
just from the point of view of the sanctuary, is we felt very strongly that when we sat down and listed the sort of the priorities or the important factors that we wanted to make sure came into the sanctuary, Ansa's touched briefly there on the complete ethical side of it. So we feel very strongly that there should never be any interaction with these animals. So we never go into those enclosures ourselves. It's always them on that side of the enclosure and we on the outside of the fence. By all means, spending time with them, building a relationship with them, caring for them. But it's always with an electric fence between us and them. But the number one priority for us, over and above taking care of these animals, was that we wanted to create a sanctuary that was as close to natural for them as possible. So, as Ansa said, these animals should never be behind enclosure fences, but the unfortunate reality is that they've all been bred for human exploitation. They've been pets. They've lived in small backyards. They've been treated as pets. It's very difficult to change that setup once it's taken place. But we said that the animals that come here, we want to sort of try and give them a life that is as close to what they could have experienced had they been born and lived in the wild. And that was why it took us so long to find the property, because we looked at many properties, and there were some beautiful properties, but they just weren't what our priority was. We're saying, we're setting up a sanctuary here, and is this the right property for the sanctuary? And, we wanted to create enclosures that have got a lot of space, and we believe that these animals are all sentient beings with similar requirements, psychological requirements, feelings that we've got. And so things like being able to look out into the distance, into the vast distance, and to be able to see kilometers away across the Maluti Mountains into Lesotho. And when you're lying in the enclosure, not to be able to see the bottom fence because it's hidden by bush, and the angle of the slope is so that you actually, when you're in that enclosure, you're looking directly over the top of it. That was the number one. We said, listen, if we can find a property that is surrounded by nature, there's lots of bird life, there's other animal life, it's away from the sound of humans and too many people, complex from the point of view of beautiful bush and other structure, that we could try and create a sanctuary that was as wild as possible for captive bred animals. And I really think that we've achieved now, and so, it's not a natural thing to have them like this, but we believe that one of the reasons why our animals seem to be so happy and so relaxed here is because they are surrounded by nature, and it's so quiet.
Yeah. So I'm inferring some of the things here, like the difference between setting up an actual sanctuary compared to someone who was just wanting to have some lions on their property, are things, for instance, that you chose, that you've put them ahead of people's interests. You've looked for land, building enclosures. That's another big part of this. The actual building of the enclosures, the costs involved, the getting the right fencing team, choosing your fencing, getting all of those enclosures built. But you've done that with every single moment. It's been with the animals' well-being in mind. It's not just a place to, we've got lions, we've got tigers, we just need to build something for them. You've actually designed and built for them. And then another thing that you've touched on, which I think would make a difference from people who literally just want to have cats, is that you are not open to the public. Are you open to not the public but guests, like people who book to come to you, or you completely keep the cats private?
And yeah, so up until now, we've been completely closed to the public. So we have not had any day visitors here at all. The only people to date that would really have visited here is if it was people that are in the industry, so let's say the Destia inspectors, NSPCA inspectors. We have an agreement. We've built up a really nice group of farmers in the area that do support the sanctuary by donating carcasses to us. This is quite a big sort of beef cattle farming area. And so we've always said to those farmers that if they donate carcasses to us, we are more than happy to let them come to the sanctuary. We would actually like them to come to the sanctuary to get a better understanding of what we're doing, what actually is an ethical sanctuary, because there's still a lot of uncertainty about it. In this area, we're sort of sitting in the middle of probably the biggest lion breeding industry in South Africa, in the world. And, so without being disrespectful to the general public, a lot of people don't really understand the difference between an ethical sanctuary and a lion breeding farm, So it's nice to be able to have those farmers coming here, seeing where their meat is going, coming and watching a couple of the animals actually eating some of the meat that they've supplied us with. But it's very regulated. It's in an open game drive vehicle where it's not people sort of walking around. They come here at a certain time. We jump onto the vehicle with them. We take them through the sanctuary. We're creating a bit of an awareness about what's going on, the plight of lions and tigers in South Africa and around the world. But at the same time, giving them a really enjoyable experience and a better understanding of what we actually here for, And I mean, not everybody comes, but the ones that have come have all left having had a thoroughly enjoyable time, and so I think we're achieving an objective through that, So it's getting a balance between being completely closed to the public, where you struggle to create awareness and education, but at the same time, always being mindful of the fact that our top priority is to ensure that our animals are comfortable and that we're not ever going to do anything that would kind of put their well-being and their health and happiness at risk, So it's a case of just managing it accordingly.
I'm hearing a very big difference between your setting, how you've done this, the planning, the setting up, and what you've achieved compared to, just somebody deciding to have some big cats. And then tell me about your staff. How do you go about getting staff, getting them in to buy in, to understand, to feel what you're feeling, and that it's not just a job? What is your sort of protocol and your stance been with staff?
Yeah, so it's actually quite an interesting one, that, Andy, because when we first purchased this property, as part of the sales agreement, we kept on the 3 staff members that were here, but they'd kind of come from a background of cattle farming and sheep farming. And so, we had to slowly start getting them to understand that we're not actually here for commercial, farming purposes. We actually here to take care of animals and provide not only the animals in our care in the sanctuary, but the other wild animals with a safe haven. And, it wasn't easy to start with, because you're trying to change a mindset that has come a long way. Ironically, what probably was quite a good thing that happened was that after a couple of months of having been here, 2 of those 3 staff members decided that this wasn't quite for them. And, what we were sort of focusing on and what they were used to doing as their work was 2 completely different things. And so they left, and that created an opportunity for us then to replace them with two new staff members. And we were then in a position to be able to go and try and find the right people that we felt were going to fit in and buy into what we were trying to do. And I mean, that's easier said than done, because you don't know the people. You're having to go on what they're telling you, and you have to make a judgment call. It's been nothing short of remarkable. These two young guys that we've taken on have completely embraced what they do. They absolutely love their job, and they've got a really, really close association with the animals. Whenever we go up to feed, they come with us in the evening. On the weekends, they go home. So it's me and Ansa here alone. But during the week, they're here and they help with the food preparation. They help us going collecting carcasses. They're coming into the enclosures and cleaning with us. But they've developed a really strong bond with those animals, to the point that those animals respond as positively to them as what they do to us. And we love seeing that, because it really encourages them. And they, on a Friday afternoon, when we go up to feed before I take them back home, as we leave each sort of enclosure, they say goodbye to the animals. Oh, goodbye, Adverella, goodbye, Mtazamaji, goodbye, Amber, see you on Monday, have a nice weekend. That's the way they talk about it. And they actually, you get the sense that they're actually going to miss being here. And it's a fantastic situation where people enjoy the work that they're doing, where come Monday morning, they've had a nice weekend back with their families, but they can't wait to get back to the sanctuary because they've almost like missed the animals, and
Yeah.
so yeah, we're very, very fortunate. These two guys are a godsend for us, and it works both ways. We've spent a lot of time teaching them about the importance of showing respect to animals, and that animals should have the same rights as humans, and that they need to be taken care of. They need to be respected. We've spent a lot of time educating them about the other wild animals on the property. We've taught them about some of the plants on the property, the difference between the indigenous plants and the alien invasive vegetation that we're clearing. We've taught them why we're doing that, the importance of creating an environment that's sort of like suitable for these animals. And it's fantastic to sometimes see them telling you, did you see that bird over there? Or did you talking about the plants and the trees? And they've learned those, and so it's really, yeah, jackal, I mean, Ansa just mentioned the jackal. I suppose outside of big cats, jackals have always been a great love of Ansa's and mine. And we used to sometimes, when we were still in the Eastern Cape, we used to go and camp at places where the highlight was that we, in the evening, would sit there with a glass of wine in our tent, and we'd be able to listen to the jackals communicating with each other. And where we are here now, there's also a really, really nice population of jackal. Not popular with many of the farmers in the area because they obviously are a threat to their livelihood, in particular with the sheep farmers. But we embrace jackals, and we welcome all the jackals to come and live on our property with us. And those two staff members are so excited in the morning when they come out and they say, "Oh, did you guys hear the jackals calling last night? And gee, we think the jackals were so close." And so it's wonderful. The one guy has now got into a ritual where every weekend, him and his girlfriend, he buys bird seed, and he goes down the road from where they live, and he's got a particular spot there where him and his girlfriend go, and they put out the bird seed, and they sit there and they watch the birds coming and eating, and so that's amazing. It's really fantastic to sort of see, and it encourages us, and it's really good for us to be able to see the interaction between them and how the big cats have learned to completely trust them the way they trust us.
Got cat bombing on your side and dog bombing going on here and on my side. Okay, guys. Okay, calm down. Yeah, we've also got a bit of a, by the way, just happened in the background, jackal sanctuary going on here as well, because the farmers are a threat to the jackal population, and then the jackals realize they can come hang out here on the mountain. But that's great. That's wonderful to hear what you're saying about your staff. I love that. I love that that's what you're also doing as a sideline to all of this. So you mentioned, I just wanted to go quickly back to one thing. You mentioned when the guys go into clean enclosures, and just for our listeners' sake, I want to just say that when they go into clean enclosures, you have got management areas that the big cats are put into, whilst you and the staff go into clean enclosures, that nobody's going in anywhere with big cats. And then also you mentioned Amber and All. They arrived in 2022, your first rescues. I'd love you to introduce Amber and All, where they came from, the rescue, how that, just tell everyone about the two girls.
Yeah, Amber and All were, they came to us from the Seaview Predator Park in Port Elizabeth that was closed down. And they were the last two big cats. And we were contacted and asked, well, would you offer them a home? And being a new sanctuary and no animals in our care yet, we said yes. A big cat is a big cat. They need a good home, whether they're tigers or lions. And we've always seen amber and ore as South African tigers. They were born in South Africa, so in our eyes, they were not exotics. They are tigers, but they are South African. So, we built the enclosures in 2022. They were completed around about July, August, and we organized to relocate the girls in October. So they arrived here. We drove through to Port Elizabeth, picked them up on the Monday morning, and came back late that evening. And it was the most amazing experience. As we drove, we turned off from the dirt road from Vicksburg, from the tar road onto the dirt road. There was just this massive electric storm, was just thunder and lightning off these mountains, as if the whole universe was just welcoming two tigers to the Eastern Free State. So we drove down the road all the way slowly with our two tiger girls in the back, arrived here on the farm, and as we drove through the farm gate, the heavens opened, and we were soaked by the time we parked the vehicle. And our two girls slept in their crates that evening. Beautiful, beautiful 11-year-old Siberian tiger sisters. Early the next morning, we could release them. They were in two enclosures with a shared middle fence. Our whole idea was to reintegrate them. They've never been together, and we were told that they actually hated each other. But we never saw that. They quickly relaxed, and they did communicate through the fence. Sometimes we could hear them chuffing and making the tiger noises. So it was our whole plan and our vision to put them together again. Unfortunately, it never happened. Amber got, not Amber, Ore got really, really sick. And she was here for about 3 months. And unfortunately, January 2023, we had to euthanize her. She had a very aggressive form of liver cancer. So she was euthanized. And then suddenly it was me and David and Amber. We had our one big cat, and it was only us here on the side of the mountain, and we became Team Tiger. And we would go up in the mornings to say hello to Amber, and we spent a lot of time with her. So we bonded very, very closely with Amber. And then in March 2023, our first lions arrived. Then we rescued Atlarella, Tazamaji, and Bina from a backyard enclosure in Gauteng. They were confiscated. They were kept illegally. So then we had our first 3 lions. And what a difference it was to have lions versus a tiger. Tigers, these very sensitive big cats, they are actually, and Amber was quite a talkative tiger. You could actually have a whole conversation with Amber, and she would give you answers. You could ask her questions, and she would answer you. Yeah, and I said Amber was because we lost Amber a month ago. It was a massive shock and very unexpected. Also due to cancer. Not exactly the same cancer as her sister Ore, but a similar type of a cancer. So, yeah, we lost our queen. Isindili lost Queen Amber because Amber was just the queen. So now we have other tigers. In the meantime, we have rescued the 2 white Boksburg tigers, and we also rescued a young tiger from Pakistan. And just recently, 2 tiger girls were surrendered to us. So at the moment, we are sitting with our five lions and 5 tigers. We also have 2 lion cubs, cuties, very cute, Simba and Nala, only 9 months old now. And hopefully soon there will be some more big cats coming to live with
I'm going to just go back to some of these rescues. You've touched on them coming from backyard gardens. The tigers in particular seem to come from backyard gardens. This is in South Africa. You say one from Pakistan, but the others are all South African. Seaview Predator Park different. But let's touch on this, seeing as we're talking about it, why there are these tigers in South Africa firstly, and why there are tigers, in people's yards. It's bizarre.
Yeah. So Andy, it's we started this whole journey focusing obviously on the plight of lions. We were very aware of what was going on there, but having got into the industry, it didn't take us long to realize that there's just as big a problem with tigers in South Africa as what there is with lions. The numbers might be slightly less, but it's still a massive problem. And one of the things that we've also picked up, again, discussions with the public, the moment you start talking about tigers in South Africa, most people look at you, they think you're crazy. They think that you don't know what you're talking about, that you've missed the plot, that you're getting a tiger confused with a leopard or with a cheetah. Because the majority of people say to you, no, but there are no tigers in South Africa. And we say to them, well, you're 100% right. There are no indigenous wild tigers, so you cannot go to a national park or a game reserve and you will never see a tiger. But it's a completely different story what's going on the breeding farms, and when it comes to people keeping tigers as pets in homes, And I suppose, there's a very interesting differentiation there between lions being indigenous to South Africa, and if you want to keep lions, there are theoretically some very strict regulations that control that, from the permitting side of things in particular, where tigers being exotic to South Africa are exempt from that. And so there's no requirement to have any permits to keep a tiger. So in particular up in the Gauteng area, if you're looking for a tiger, you can go online and you can find a tiger and you can buy a tiger and you can bring them back to your residential property in the middle of Johannesburg or the middle of Pretoria, wherever you want, without any regulations as far as the size of the property, what they've got access to, and you can keep a tiger there. And unfortunately, it's human nature. It's a very appealing thing, particularly when they are so small and they maybe 2 or 3 months old, tiny little, stunning little cubs. One can understand why people fall for this, but it doesn't take long. It probably takes literally only a few months, and those tigers are no longer cubs, and they start becoming quite big and becoming a little bit more aggressive and start destroying the property and start becoming a risk to the people that are taking care of them and feeding them. Space becomes a major issue. The provision of decent food becomes a problem because they are now starting to eat a couple of kilograms of meat per day. And so it kind of rapidly unravels into kind of a bit of a nightmare for those people. And that I suppose is why sanctuaries end up being kind of contacted to almost take the problem off of their hands. And it's shocking. When you go to these places to fetch them, you cannot believe the conditions that these animals are being. Majority of these owners don't see anything wrong with it, and if it hadn't been for the financial implications of taking care of them or the threat to themselves or their children, they probably would have carried on doing it for the rest of their lives, giving no concern to the welfare of the animal, So, it's an unbelievable situation, to be honest.
It's a bit of an ego-driven situation, this having a tiger in order just to have a tiger and invite the friends around and come and have a braai and look at my tiger. It's and quite bizarre, because this issue that you pointed out, that there is no legislation prohibiting or governing with permits the ownership of a tiger in Gauteng. It's not something that's newly just been, people have just become aware of it. Government's known about this for 15, 17 years, yet that loophole still exists. So yeah, I know I've also had people saying tigers, when I talk about tigers, especially in relation to Isindele, so that's the tigers going to you. And yeah, people are like, tigers in South Africa. So yes, there's not supposed to be tigers in South Africa. They should never have been here. But there is a tiger problem, and it just seems to be something that government could so easily sort out and close that loophole and put legislation in place. I know the Free State, where your sanctuary is and my sanctuary are both in the Free State, you can't have tigers in captivity in the Free State unless you are a sanctuary. So breeders and just people who just want to own a cat are actually prohibited from having a tiger in the Free State. So it is doable that legislation could be put in place. But I'm sad for you, but it is part of the job, going to these places and seeing the conditions, and also coming up against the people and their mentality about keeping big cats in these tiny little places. So they're not getting the proper food, they're not getting the exercise, not getting any of their requirements met, never mind having been robbed of every single ability to behave in an instinctual manner. But how does it feel? Successfully building a beautiful sanctuary and offering a safe and loving haven to previously abused big cats. Give us a glimpse into the emotions of two farm-dwelling, mountainside, sanctuary-owning people who look after big cats, who see them, hear them, smell them, just on a daily basis.
Yeah, so Andy, I mean, it's still surreal for us, and I think it's something that we will never ever take for granted, or never ever get tired of being part of. I mean, we feel very strongly that this property is as much a sanctuary for ourselves as it is for the animals that we take care of here. So we also love being surrounded by the peace and quiet from nature. We get on well with people, but if we can choose, we choose to sit quietly in nature and take in all the sounds of nature that you can only really enjoy if you're on your own. So yeah, for us to get up, I mean, the days are long. We're getting up really early in the morning. By 5 o'clock, we're already having our cup of coffee. We're out early in the morning to go and check on the enclosures, make sure that there's been nothing that's gone wrong during the course of the evening, that the animals are fine. It's something that has to be done on a daily basis. But it's really, I mean, Ansa often says to me, this is our job, to walk around a sanctuary, checking up on these animals and saying good morning to everybody and checking that they're fine. Sometimes you feel a bit guilty. You think, gee, I should be doing something that other people might deem to be more important, and yet this is our job. And, I suppose we're the fortunate ones that get to do this, So what's been quite interesting is that we often chuckle when we Isindele, Big Cat and Predator Sanctuary, but Ansa often refers to us as, we're not a big cat sanctuary, a big cat nursery, because all the animals in our care are really young. Amber and all were 11, 12, 13 years old. The rest of them have all been really young when they got here. So our oldest animal right now is Bina, who is just turned 4 years old. So in the context of sanctuary life and that sort of thing, the average age is really young. So one of the funniest things has been how long it's taken for our lions to start roaring. They don't have any role models. They don't have any other fully grown male and female lions and other enclosures that roar and they listen to them and they can learn
Ignite that
from them.
instinct.
That natural instinct, they've had to kind of teach themselves, because it's otherwise it's very tight, and so it's taken Atlarella and Mtazamaji are also just over 3 years old now, and they've probably only in the last couple of months have started roaring. And in the context of what we hear when we visit LLA, it's still kindergarten stuff. They still haven't quite perfected the roars yet, but every day they're getting better. But already it is just the most remarkable thing to, the sanctuary is set up against with the backdrop of the sanctuary is the Wittenberg Mountains, and it's very typical, these Eastern Free State sandstone kind of ridges and cliffs. And they form the backdrop of the majority of the enclosures. And so even these relatively inexperienced roaring lions, when they roar, it reverberates off those cliffs, and jeepers, it's like, sort of, for us, it's just the most amazing. I mean, it must be one of the most beautiful sounds of nature, certainly African sounds, to hear lions roaring, so we're looking forward to rescuing more and that they can kind of feed off each other. But yeah, I mean, Ansa's mentioned about the tigers. They're completely different to the lions. They're very communicative. So when you walk up and down those enclosures, sometimes if it's a warm day, the lions they'll just look up at you and, oh, there comes mom and dad, and they're checking up and again, but they don't really give you the time of day. They just flop back down and go to sleep. It's a completely different thing at nighttime, where they are highly, highly active. But the tigers, unless it's a really warm midsummer type of day, they will almost always get up from wherever they are, and they'll come out to the enclosure fence, and they'll come and say good morning to us, and they walk up and down, and their chuffing and their different sounds and communications are at a different level, and so it's really entertaining for us, and you almost get the sense that you can kind of have a conversation with them while you're walking around, so that's a different dynamic to the lions. And so for us, it's really a privilege to have both lions on the property, but also, having never thought about tigers, having ended up being able to learn and spend time with them as well.
I'm very, very happy for you hearing those sounds. My deepest condolences about Amber and all. Hearing your lions roaring, I know that it moves you from within. It's the most just ancient, deep, primordial feeling when you hear that lion roaring. 3 years old is not that old. Some of mine have only started roaring when they're 3. A few of them in Bali started roaring very early, but 3 is not that bad, especially for them having to sort of set it up on their own. Because, as you know, when one lion starts roaring, it's like a snowball effect, and then they all start roaring and they answer each other. Except our queen here was Queen Emma. So Emma was an old lioness, and when Emma roared, everyone just was quiet. But they were like, yes, Queen Emma, you're the best, you're the strongest, you're the biggest, and they're just like, keep quiet. But the rest of the time, when you find your lions roaring, it's usually one starts saying, hey, here I am, this is me, I'm so big, and sort of it's a proclamation and a declaration of who they are, and then everyone else joins in until you've got this absolute chorus, and then echoing off the cliffs. It's absolutely amazing. So I know how you feel and what you're hearing, and it's wonderful. What a wonderful! It is a privilege, but also it's just it's a little bit that you get back, right? At the end of the day, when you hear that roar, when you lie in bed in the morning, early hours of the morning, and you hear the roar, it's like it feeds your soul. I'd like to end off on a bit of a heartfelt note. I'd like to hear something from you, but from my side, I'd like to thank you for what you're doing, and that you went into this, and that you saw this need in South Africa. And if anyone were to come to you and say that they would like to do a similar thing, we know that there's an absolute need in South Africa for ethical sanctuaries. And I'm going to just divert a little bit here and say that there is a big difference legally in South Africa. There is a difference between a sanctuary and a place that has lions and big cats. There are only 8, I think, actual legitimate, accredited, permitted sanctuaries in South Africa. So we often hear the word sanctuary flung about, and anyone who just has big cats says that they've got a sanctuary. The word is used willy-nilly, which is absolutely incorrect. So a sanctuary is what you two have built, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I have absolute respect for the two of you for coming along and doing that. So if there's anyone out there who would like to set up a sanctuary, just briefly, before I ask you to make your final comments, what would it take? What would you say? Yes, go for it. And also, would you be a guiding light? Could they turn to you for advice and help?
Yeah, well, I think from my side, I will encourage people to go for it, but it must be an ethical sanctuary. It can't be just a pseudo sanctuary. You can't, under the name of sanctuary, further exploit these animals. They must know, everybody must know, it is an amazing experience. Like David said, we will never take this for granted. We are always in awe. You walk out, you see a tiger walking out of a bush, and you are in the Eastern Free State, and you say to yourself, how amazing, how majestic, how beautiful. You look at your lions. These lions are lions, and they are so big. And you look at in their eyes, those cold eyes, and they are just awesome animals. But you must know it's also hard work taking care of these animals. It's not just fun. Your animals can get sick. Your animals can feel down, and you're not always sure why they are feeling down. Why are they perhaps not eating as well tonight? So there are, like a mother worrying about her children, you do sometimes worry about your animals. So it's not just fun. It's not just walking with lions, walking with tigers, hearing the lions roar. There's work. It's hard work. It's long hours. At the moment, we don't have any vacations. We don't leave our sanctuary. It's still a young sanctuary. We don't have a manager that can take over while we go on leave for a few days. So it's us doing the dirty work. And but it's worth it. It's worth going to bed at night knowing that we have made a difference in the lives of these big cats today. We could offer them this, we could offer them the peace, the quiet, a good meal tonight. We can take care of them. It's rewarding work, but it's hard work. But I would say with the need in South Africa, especially if there is something coming out of this closing down the lion breeding industry, the more ethical sanctuaries we can have in South Africa to help those animals coming out of the industry, the better.
Yeah, Andy, it's not easy. It's there's a massive financial commitment that needs to be in place up front. And so, that's obviously going to preclude a lot of people from even being able to start with something like this. Currently with ourselves, we've been going now for sort of 2.5 years or so. The sanctuary is still fully funded by our own personal savings, but that is something that we felt very strongly about, and it was kind of built into our budgeting plan from the start. So that is a challenge. There needs to be, there has to be a massive commitment to be able to do something like this, because it's not a case of starting it and then stopping it. I mean, you'll know better than most. It's a becomes a lifelong commitment to doing this. You really need to think carefully about it. If you are that way inclined, I think, we personally, we don't find the day-to-day running of the sanctuary, it's demanding from the point of view of the amount of time and that. But if you're someone that's got a natural feel for animals and being able to read and interpret the messages, the subtle little messages that they're giving you, and I'm sure there's many people out there that can do it, you're already on the front foot as being able to monitor the animals and make sure, because I suppose one of the key things here, unlike your child, they can tell you that they're feeling a bit sick and they've got a sore throat or whatever it might be. These animals, they do have a way of communicating with you that they're not feeling well, but it still takes quite a lot more kind of like monitoring and observation to really work out what's going on. But if you've got a kind of a natural feel for that, I think you're already probably halfway there to being able to run a successful big cat sanctuary. And yeah, I suppose the setting, not every sanctuary has to be on the side of the mountain like us. It can, there's, we had to consider the distance from where we were likely to be rescuing animals from. So you're on top of just the financial side, the logistics side of things, obviously is also going to play a big role. So it's like, at the end of the day, it's like starting any new business. There's a due diligence that's got to be done. You've got to do it seriously. You've got to weigh up all the pros and the cons. And once you've done that and you still feel positive, like me and Ansa did, well, then there's no reason why you can't be successful in setting up a new sanctuary, And we certainly would encourage. We've always been people that have enjoyed learning from other people, and so we do thrive and respect people that are open to sharing their little trade secrets and their information. And that was something that I mentioned right at the start, how fantastic that was for us starting off, where we knew so little about big cats in captivity. So from our side, we would always be open to sharing the little bit of knowledge that we've got, to be able to help other people to be able to do something like this.
And from my side, there are things that I think people would need to know about the collection of food. They need to know that there's enough food. People who have got sanctuaries in areas that aren't, you mentioned earlier on that you're in a cattle farming area. People that are in some of the sanctuary owners that I know really struggle to get food, and that becomes one of their big costs. For you and for myself, our costs will mainly be about the bucky and the diesel, and the time it takes to actually go and fetch carcasses. But people would need to take into consideration what they're going to feed, because you can't have down days where you're like, oh, this week we don't have much food, let's just go to Pick n Pay and buy something for the cats. It's like, it doesn't stop. And then on top of that, the veterinary cost, and also you put supplements and minerals and into the food. So there's a lot that goes into it, especially if you're going to do it properly.
Yeah, so those the points you're making, very, very relevant. And I suppose at the end of the day, you need to be honest and realistic about that when it comes to let's say the ultimate capacity of your sanctuary. People are often surprised. You talk about 10, 12, 15,000 lions on breeding farms in South Africa, and we're talking about the potential and the capacity to rescue 25 or 30 animals, so it's like a drop in the ocean. But if there's more and more people that rescue 25 or 30, well, eventually you can make a difference. But that was a very important aspect for us to consider, saying, listen, okay, well, the financial implications of this, the veterinary bills, all the other costs that go with it, but very important, the availability of feed, and it doesn't help to have 50 starving, hungry, malnourished lions in your care and you can't take care of them properly, you have to be honest about saying, listen, okay, well, our capacity for a range of reasons is 20 or 25 or 30. And you need to be very careful that you don't overcommit yourself, because there's a lot of like sort of chain reaction events that can then start taking place. So for us, we also in that sort of ballpark, we've rescued 12. We've currently got 10 in our care, and we're saying, well, we think that we are comfortable that we could grow to about 25, definitely no more than 30. And one has to stick to that and understand the implications of what you're doing here. The animals in your care have to be taken care of 100%.
So true. As ending statements, I'd love it if you both just said just a heartfelt something. Just if you got this one opportunity to speak to people out there in the world and you can give them one little message with regards to big cats that you'd just love them to know and hear from you. That's you being cat bombed again with your kitty cat on the laptop. Yeah, territorial. Yeah, one heartfelt message to people out there about big cats.
Yeah, big cats are, to me, they are exceptionally special. They are sentient beings, and I can't differentiate when I look at them. I can't differentiate and say I think you should love lions more than tigers or tigers more than lions. To me, these big cats are majestic, secretive, sentient beings who deserve just an amazing life. Like I said before, they should not have been behind fences. They should have been our tigers, should have walked through the jungles, either there in India or Amber or Siberian. Our lions should be somewhere here in Africa roaming the plains, but they are here behind fences. But I must admit, looking in the eyes of these beautiful, beautiful animals, you just feel them. You see the courage. You know that they are wild at heart. They are just different to any other animal that you can ever have in your life, that you can ever have in your care. I can't imagine my life without these big cats. I can't imagine it without our domestic cats, and I can't imagine it without these big cats. It is, to us, it's not just having a sanctuary for big cats. To us, this sanctuary is also our sanctuary, and these big cats are here to also almost like help us redeem everything that have gone wrong, trying to right this wrong of humans and having these cats and giving them a special life.
Yeah, and from my side, maybe a slightly different slant. Really focusing on the reality of what's happening with all these big cats, whether you're talking lions, tigers, mountain lions, caracals, whatever it might be, let's talk about these predator cats. In the wild, what's happening to them is, it's nothing short of catastrophic, really, So a lot of our focus here, although we're taking care of animals in captivity, we do spend a lot of our time when we're communicating and interacting with people, really educating them and creating awareness about what's happening to the wild populations, which are ultimately the ones that we really need to be preserving and taking care of, And so, without wanting to preach to humanity and to people and that sort of thing, we really need to start taking stock of the impact that we are having on this planet and realizing that the habitat, it all boils down to the habitat and the availability of prey that's left for these animals, It doesn't help to breed more of them, but there's nowhere for them to go. There's nowhere for them to roam and live a wild life. There's no prey for them to be able to survive with, And so that's a really big focus, is that we have a responsibility here to take care of the animals, but also to create awareness and educate. And people need to understand there are now, let's say, 15 to 20,000 wild lions left in the entire world. Only 25, 30 years ago, there was probably 250,000 of them. There's less than a couple of thousand wild tigers left. It's just frightening, And if we don't do anything about it now, our grandchildren and their children, they're not going to get to see any of these animals. They're going to look at them in pictures, and they're going to see them on movies and documentaries, and that's going to be it. So we have to protect them. We have to look after them. Sometimes they start at grassroots level, but in the case of these predators, sometimes you need to start right at the top. Make sure the top is being taken care of. I hope that there are more and more people that are aware of this now, and we really hope that the future is more promising for all these big cats.
Thank you. Some very deep and very important messages there for people. I think that we could carry on and we could talk about this, and I think maybe we'll meet again and maybe handle and go into some of these issues in another episode. But I'd like to thank you very much for your time and for sharing this little bit of your lives, giving us a little peek into your beautiful sanctuary. I'd love it if I could put just a picture or two of the sanctuary and maybe some footage so that people have an idea. That would be great. Yeah, thank you very much for joining the Lion Quirks podcast.
Thanks, Andi. Yeah, nice to catch up with you again. It's always a pleasure. And we've certainly enjoyed the opportunity to chat to you and share some of our insights into the industry.
Can I put Isindile's details anywhere? I know you don't have visitors, but maybe people want to reach out just to support.
Yeah, that would be fantastic, Andi. I mean, obviously we've run out of time there, but we are in the process of setting up a volunteer program here at the sanctuary. It's taken time just to get the accommodation and that right. And so I think, early in the new year, we'll be in a position where we would like to start welcoming, paying volunteers to come and spend time with us here. It's again an opportunity to create awareness. It's a great financial support to us at the sanctuary. So yeah, we'd very much appreciate you sort of sharing the contact details of the sanctuary with your viewers.
Absolutely. So January 2025, to give context. Absolutely. I'll put those details.